She was humiliated every single day, right there in the school hallway, in front of everyone. And then, just to laugh at her one more time, they signed her up for the school's talent show, planning to turn her into a public joke. But this time, something was different. Someone stood up for her, and he didn't walk away. Welcome to Heartland Stories. I'm Ethan Hale, and here I share true stories about honor, kindness, and quiet strength. Today I want to tell you about a girl named Ellie, bullied, mocked, and cast aside just for being different. And about Jack Mason, a man who once lost a daughter and couldn't turn his back when he saw another girl being broken. But can the two of them prove to an entire school that her voice isn't something to laugh at? It's something to respect? Can they change the minds of people who've only ever seen her as a victim? If you want to find out whether a quiet voice can rise above the cruel noise of a crowd, then hit that like button and let's begin. When the final bell rang at Banksville Middle School, the hallways came alive. The buzz of voices, lockers slamming, sneakers echoing down the tile floor. Kids spilled into the corridors, tossing candy wrappers, talking weekend plans. Ellie James walked quietly through the crowd, clutching her worn-out backpack. Her shoes were half a size too big, her jacket smelled like mothballs, and her eyes stayed low, like someone who'd long since learned how to disappear. She was just a shadow in a sea of noise. She almost made it to the back exit when someone called her name. "Ellie," someone sang out, dragging it out like a joke. "Where you headed, superstar?" She stopped, not because she wanted to, but because her legs just froze. Like standing still might make her invisible. But the laughter behind her said otherwise. "Better warm up for your big debut," came another voice. Ellie turned. By the bleachers stood a group of 8th graders, 4 boys and 1 girl. The girl held a phone in her hand. "You're on the list for the talent show," the girl said, grinning under her hoodie. "You didn't know? You're our headliner." Ellie frowned. She hadn't signed up. "Weird, huh?" the girl went on. "Guess someone really wanted to give you the spotlight. Or maybe just a gift." Her voice was sugary sweet, but something in her tone was sharp. Standing just beside her was Claire. She held her phone too, but didn't hit record. She just watched, looked at Ellie, then at the others, then back at Ellie. She said nothing, and did even less. The boys started laughing. One stepped forward. "Come on, give us a preview. Sing for us, Ellie. We're dying to hear it." I don't want to," she whispered. "Ah, she's shy," another mocked. "Maybe she needs a little help." One of them gave her a nudge. Another yanked her earbuds from her pocket and threw them on the ground. Laughter got louder. "Come on, sing. Or it gets worse," the same girl said, now pulling out her phone. "I'm filming." Ellie's throat tightened. Everything inside her screamed. Run. Hide. Disappear. But there was no one around. School was over. The teachers were gone. The courtyard was nearly empty. She stood there alone, surrounded by laughter, by faces that didn't care. They hadn't come to hear her voice. They came to break it. An old Ford pickup turned the corner and rolled to a quiet stop near the edge of the schoolyard. Behind the wheel sat Jack Mason, a man in his 40s, worn flannel shirt, jeans stained with oil, face weathered by years of sun and work. He'd just finished a shift at the lumber yard and had swung by the school to pick up a tool order from the maintenance shed. But something caught his eye. A cluster of kids near the bleachers. One girl, standing too still, too quiet. The others formed a loose circle around her. One gave her a shove. Another threw something at the ground. One kid was holding a phone. Jack's gaze narrowed. He'd seen enough to know. This wasn't harmless teasing. This was something else. Something in that scene hit Jack square in the chest. Too familiar. Too close to home. He shut off the engine, threw open the door, and started across the field. His steps weren't rushed, but they were sure. Not loud, but there was no mistaking the purpose in them. By the time he reached them, one of the boys had just shoved the girl again. "Hey," Jack said. He didn't yell, but the sharpness in his voice cut through the noise like breaking glass. The group froze. One of the boys gave a nervous laugh. "We were just messing around, sir." "It's fine." Jack stepped up and stood beside the girl. Not touching her, not crowding her, but close enough to make a statement. She wasn't alone now. "I saw it," he said evenly. "I've got it on video, and I know your names." The boy holding the phone dropped his gaze. The girl with the smug grin turned pale. Nobody moved. Then one of them peeled off, and the rest followed. They scattered without a word. Only one stayed a second longer. The girl with the phone. She looked back. Not apologetic. But not angry either. Something else. Confused, maybe. Then she turned and walked away. Ellie hadn't moved. Jack crouched down, picked up her earbuds from the grass, and held them out. "You okay?" he asked gently. She nodded, then shook her head, then nodded again. "Let me give you a ride home." She didn't say anything, but she followed. And for the first time in a long time, someone stood beside her without needing her to explain why. The cab of the pickup was quiet. The engine hummed low, tires rolling steady, along a back road that cut through fields and faded fences. Ellie sat with her hands clasped tight in her lap, eyes fixed on the rubber floor mat. She didn't ask anything. Jack didn't push it either. They drove like that for a while. Quiet, but not uncomfortable. About 10 minutes in, the silence started to feel heavier. Then Ellie finally spoke. "You don't even know me." Jack glanced at her, then back to the road. "Think I know enough." She looked at him, unsure. Not angry, just confused. "Why'd you stop?" Jack let out a slow breath. His grip on the wheel tightened. "I had a daughter," he said. "She looked like you sometimes. Quiet. Alone. I wasn't always there when she needed me." He didn't say more. Ellie didn't ask. She turned to the window. Old barns and peeling paint slid past under a soft gray sky. Flags faded by sun, and time hung limp from rusted poles. "Thanks," she said quietly. Jack nodded once. "Somebody had to," he replied. They turned off the main road and pulled up to a house, with peeling paint and a porch light burning soft and steady. Off to the side sat a garage with its doors slightly open. "You want to come in for a minute?" Jack asked. "I've got something in there worth hearing." Ellie hesitated. Then, surprisingly, even to herself, she nodded. Sometimes trust doesn't start with words. Sometimes it begins in silence. Jack hit the button on the wall, and the garage door slowly creaked open, letting in the last cold light of the sunset. Ellie stepped inside cautiously, wrapping her coat tighter. She looked around. The garage was old, but cared for. It smelled of wood, oil, and something warm, familiar, almost like home. Tools lined the shelves, old paint cans, a beat-up guitar missing a string. And in the corner stood an upright piano worn, keys slightly yellowed. "I've never sung with a piano before," she mumbled. "Want to try?" Jack asked. His voice was calm, no pressure. She shrugged, but stepped closer. Jack lifted the lid, sat down, and played a single chord. Warm and soft, like a blanket on a cold night. Ellie stood beside him, not sure what to do with her hands. Then she took a deep breath. "Don't laugh," she said quietly. "Wouldn't dream of it," Jack replied, pressing the keys again. At first, her voice was barely a whisper. She stumbled on her breath, her tone uncertain. But Jack kept playing gently, steadily. And something started to shift. Her voice leveled out. She found her footing. And slowly, it felt like a valve opened deep inside her, releasing what had been locked up for years. The words were simple. The melody, nothing fancy. But every note held something real. Raw. Tentative. But honest. The kind of voice that made you stop tapping your pen. Put down your phone. And listen. When she reached the final verse, her voice caught. She stopped, embarrassed, staring down. "I messed it up," she whispered. Jack didn't answer right away. He let the silence settle. Then he said, "That was the most honest song I've heard in 10 years. Ellie looked up, and for the first time that night, she smiled. Just a little. The next evening, just before dark, Ellie came back. Jack was already out on the porch, sitting like he knew she'd show. He didn't ask any questions. Just stood up, nodded toward the garage. "Feel like trying again?" She didn't say anything, just followed him. The garage door was open, like it had been waiting. Inside, things had changed. In the corner sat a stool with a cushion, next to a folding music stand. On top of the piano, a beat-up thermos steamed softly. Beside a chipped mug that read, "The world needs music. That's for you," Jack said, pointing to the stool. Figured it might be more comfortable sitting down. Ellie eased into the seat like it was made of glass. Her eyes wandered across the room. Jars of screws, old photo frames, a faded note in a wooden frame. She took a breath, deeper than usual. The air felt different in here. Not warm like heat, but warm like being allowed to be yourself. "You come in here a lot?" she asked. Jack paused at the piano. "Since Hannah." He let the name hang for a moment. "It used to hurt too much to come in here. Now, not so much." He played a short phrase on the keys. Ellie started to sing again. But this time, she didn't curl into herself. She didn't whisper. Her voice was still soft, but it carried something new. Gentleness, without fear. After the song, Jack poured her some cocoa. She held the mug with both hands. Not just for warmth, but as if letting go might make the moment vanish. "This is weird," she said, eyes on the floor. "What is?" "That it's quiet in here. Not empty, just quiet." Jack nodded. "Some places are meant to be that way," he said. The garage never became a studio. It wasn't a stage. But for Ellie, it became something she'd never had before. A place of her own. A place where no one corrected her, laughed at her, or pushed her. Where she could make mistakes. Where she could be silent. Or sing. Where she could simply be. By the time they wrapped up that night, the light in the garage had softened, as if the room itself was winding down. Ellie sat on the stool, holding an empty mug in both hands. Jack was wiping down the piano keys with a worn cloth, slow and quiet. Her eyes drifted up to the high shelf near the tool bins. There was a cedar box, simple, edges worn smooth by time. "Whose is that?" she asked. Jack paused, then reached up, took it down carefully, and placed it on the table. "That." He opened the lid. "That was Hannah's. My daughter." Inside were old cassette tapes, each labeled in careful handwriting. Spring rehearsal, Hannah, morning, before the competition. Some had just dates. "She used to sing?" Ellie asked. "Not often," Jack said. "But when she did, the whole house went quiet." He turned on an old tape player. From the speaker came a voice. Young, unsure, just a bit out of rhythm, but full of life. Warm, honest. Ellie didn't move. She listened. "I was scared I'd forget her voice," Jack said quietly. "That's why I started recording." He flipped to another tape. This time it was Ellie's voice. A recording from the day before. The two voices weren't the same. Not in sound, but in something else. A shared vulnerability. That crack in the tone you can't fake. You can only live through it. "I didn't tell you before," Jack said, "but I've been recording you too. Not to show anyone. Just so I don't lose it." Ellie looked at the box. At the tapes. Then at Jack. "You think I'm like her?" "No," he said. "You're you. But when I listen, sometimes it feels like she's here again." Ellie nodded. Slowly. As if something inside her quietly fell into place. Maybe now she understood why her voice mattered in this room. The next morning, Jack pulled up to a small house. With faded shutters and a front porch in need of paint. The yard was tidy. But there was a weight to it, the kind that builds up over years. He shut off the engine and walked to the door. It was opened by an older woman, gray hair pinned back tight. Hands knotted like old tree roots. Eyes pale but steady. "You Jack?" she asked, not raising her voice. "Yes, ma'am. I've been working with Ellie. On music." She looked at him a long moment. First cautious. Then something deeper. "I heard you've been singing with her." Or something like that. "I'm not teaching her," Jack said. "I'm just giving her a place to be heard. No pressure. No grades." She nodded and sat down on a wooden chair by the door, gesturing for him to join her. He sat on the edge of the steps. "Ellie's a good girl," she said. "But life hasn't left her much room. Not at home. Not in school. No space to grow. To speak. To sing." Jack stayed quiet. She went on. "I'm getting older. Forget things, names, birthdays. But I still know when someone's doing right by her." She looked him square in the eye. "Don't mess this up." He nodded gently. "Wouldn't dream of it." She let out a faint smile. "Good. Then we're settled." Just then, the screen door creaked open. Ellie stood there, notebook in hand. Calm. Ready. And for the first time, her grandmother didn't look worried. She looked hopeful. Day by day, Ellie started showing up at the garage more confidently. She didn't wait for an invite anymore. She'd just walk in, nod at Jack, and head straight to her stool. Like the place already knew she was coming. To Jack, the change was obvious. Her voice grew stronger. clearer. She started offering her own melodies, even corrected herself mid-song. When her voice cracked, she didn't stop, she just paused, then picked up again. "You hear yourself?" Jack asked one day after a particularly strong take. "A little," Ellie shrugged. "I don't really know what right sounds like. But sometimes I just feel it." "That's what right sounds like," Jack said. "Your voice isn't about notes. It's about what's hiding inside them." That evening, Jack cleared off a wall in the garage, pulled out old nails, dusted it down, and hung up a corkboard. On it, he pinned blank index cards with pushpins. Next to it, a jar full of sharp pencils. "What's that?" Ellie asked, eyeing it with suspicion. "Your wall," Jack said. "You write lyrics, don't you?" She nodded. "Well, now you've got a place to keep them. Until you're ready to let them out." She started with just one card, torn from a notebook, uneven edges. On it, in small handwriting. "I thought I was silence, but maybe I'm a song." Jack read it. Paused. "That's strong." Ellie looked down, blushing. "It's simple." "Simple is honest," Jack said. "And honest always beats loud." After that, the wall started to fill. Little pieces, song titles, half-finished lines, phrases. Sometimes just single words. Sky, shiver, remember, don't yell, sing. The garage slowly became more than a room with a piano. It became a space where Ellie grew, where her voice, inside and out, got braver, where she started to believe the music in her wasn't an accident. It was part of who she'd always been. One evening, Ellie walked into the garage not with her usual notebook, but with a paper bundle folded neatly in her hands. She held it like it might break. She didn't say anything, just placed it next to the piano. "What's that?" Jack asked, looking up from tuning a pedal. "My mom's notebook," she said. "I found it in her dresser. It's old. The pages are faded." Jack sat beside her. Carefully, he unwrapped it. Inside was a worn-out journal filled with different styles of handwriting. Some neat, some rushed, like someone writing fast or late into the night. The pages smelled of time. "She used to write songs?" he asked. Ellie nodded. "Back when I was little, before she left. She always talked about going to Nashville, but she stayed. With my dad. And then it just stopped." They flipped through the pages in silence. Most songs were half-finished, but one caught Jack's eye. Title, "The Hollow Sound." The melody had notes, but the verse was empty. The chorus, cut off mid-thought. "You remember her voice?" he asked softly. "Bits and pieces," Ellie said. "She sang sometimes at night. There was this one tune I remember. About the rain. She said the sky wasn't crying. It was remembering." Jack closed the notebook. "Then let's finish it." Ellie looked up. Sometimes," Jack said, "the best music isn't new. It's the stuff someone didn't get to finish." They spent the whole evening with that song. Jack worked out chords. Ellie hummed half-lines, scribbled ideas. No rush. Just following the thread of something once lost. That was ready to be found again. As night fell and the lamp above the piano cast a warm glow across the pages, Ellie stared at the line she'd just written. "You think she'd want us to finish it?" Jack didn't answer right away. He just nodded. And for a moment, it wasn't just the two of them in that garage. There were three voices in the song now. A few days later, after another long evening of practice, the music had faded and the garage had gone quiet. Jack leaned against the piano, watching Ellie as she flipped through her mother's notebook, humming scraps of lyrics under her breath. "Ellie," he said, calm and unhurried, "we've got ourselves a song." She nodded. "I still down. I submitted you for the school talent show," he added. "Under your name." Now she looked up, surprised, a little confused, maybe even scared. "You're serious?" "Only if you say yes." Ellie froze for a moment. On her face, two feelings fighting it out. The familiar no, and something new. Still small, but growing. "It's not really my song," she said quietly. "It's Mom's words. Your chords." "It's our song," Jack said gently. "You gave it voice. You gave it an ending. And if you're ready, maybe the world should hear it." She glanced at the song wall, at the little card that read, "I thought I was silence." Her eyes lingered. She took a breath. "Okay," she said, "but no announcements. And no pushing me on stage." Jack smiled, just a little. "You got it." He walked over to the workbench, pulled out a folded entry form, and handed her a pen. Ellie signed it quickly, without fuss. Her hand didn't shake. She'd made a choice. And it wasn't her mother's song anymore. It wasn't Hannah's voice. It was her own, yes, finally given shape. The next morning, just as Jack was pouring his first cup of coffee, the phone rang. "Mr. Mason?" The voice on the line was professional, measured. "This is Missy Reynolds, the principal. We received your submission for Ellie James in the school talent show." "Yes, ma'am," Jack said calmly. "That's correct. Well, we have a few concerns. Given her personal situation, the board feels it might be too much for her. We understand your intentions, but—" "She agreed to it," Jack interrupted. "I just brought it up. She made the decision." There was a pause. "Still, we think it's best if she withdraws, to avoid unnecessary stress." Jack didn't argue. He just said, "I'll tell her, but don't expect her to back out." Later, in the garage, he told Ellie what was said. She sat on the stool, flipping through her notebook. Face calm. Too calm. "So they're scared," she said finally. "Scared I'll fall apart?" "Looks like it," Jack said. She looked up at him. There was no question in her eyes. Only resolve. "Then I'll tell them myself." "You sure?" Jack asked. She nodded. "They signed me up without asking. They can at least hear why I'm not backing out." The school office was quiet. Ellie walked in wearing a denim jacket, holding a folded piece of paper to her chest. Jack waited in the back. Didn't say a word. "Ellie," said Missy Reynolds with a polite, strained smile. "We just want to make sure you're not feeling pressured." "I'm not," Ellie replied evenly. "You're certain you're ready? It's a big event." Ellie unfolded the paper and handed it to her. "This is the song I wrote. Not for a contest. Because I'm done being quiet." Missy read the first few lines. Then the rest. "You want people to hear you?" "I deserve to be heard," Ellie said. And for the first time, her voice wasn't soft. It was steady. Missy folded the paper, nodded. "All right. You'll stay on the list." Outside, Jack smiled. "Proud of you," he said. Ellie didn't answer. She just held the notebook tighter to her chest. And in that small gesture, there was more strength than 1,000 words. The night before the performance, the garage glowed with soft yellow lamplight. Outside, the trees stood still. Even the wind seemed to be holding its breath. Ellie sat at the piano, notebook open in front of her, fingers tracing lines she already knew by heart. Jack silently checked the pedal. More out of habit than need. "Want to run the ending one more time?" he asked. "No stops," Ellie replied. "Even if I mess up, I'll sing through it." He nodded. The melody began. Her voice was steady, warm, a little shaky on the first verse. But then it leveled out. She wasn't chasing perfect. She was just telling the truth. When the song ended, the garage went still. Jack closed the lid over the keys and walked over to an old shelf. He pulled down a small velvet pouch and brought it to her. "This belonged to Hannah," he said quietly. "My daughter. She used to wear it before every performance." He placed it gently in Ellie's hand. "I think it's yours now." Ellie opened it. Inside was a silver pendant with a treble clef. On the back, engraved in delicate script. "Still singing." "I can't take this," she whispered, eyes wide. "You can't," Jack said. "Because you're carrying forward what she didn't get the chance to finish. And because you're ready to be heard." Ellie slipped the chain over her neck. The pendant rested just below her collarbone. She held it with her fingers, not confidently, but firmly. "Thank you," she said, "for trusting me, for the music, for believing." Jack only nodded. And in the silence that followed, there was no fear left, only clarity, and the quiet certainty that tomorrow mattered. The auditorium at Banksville School was packed. Parents, teachers, students. Some came to support, some out of curiosity, some just because it was something to do. The lights above the stage were harsh and cold. Backstage, half shadows, thick silence. In the faint mustiness of old curtains, Ellie stood against the wall, fingers tugging at the cuff of her sleeve. Under her shirt, Hannah's pendant rested over her heart. She didn't look at the crowd. Not yet. Jack stood nearby, saying nothing. He didn't need to. The next performer, the announcer called out. Ellie James, with an original song. Someone chuckled. A couple kids exchanged looks. A phone lifted into the air, already recording. Ellie stepped out, uncertain, but steady. She walked to the mic. Her fingers trembled. She glanced out at the crowd, just once, then dropped her gaze. Jack sat in the third row. He didn't nod, didn't smile, just looked at her. She took one breath, deep, and began. Her voice was warm, low, with a little rasp around the edges. The first few lines were careful, like she was testing if they'd hold. But they did. And more than that, they carried weight. It wasn't trained technique. It was feeling. Every word lived. Every pause mattered. In the chorus, her voice rose. Not loud, but full. There was fear in it, and hope, memory, and the quiet ache of someone finally stepping into the light. Not to be famous, just to be seen. When the song ended, silence filled the room. Heavy, still. Then someone stood up. One person, then another. The crowd rose with her. No cheers. Not right away. Just standing. Like no one wanted to break the silence. That truth had just carved out. Then applause. Slow. Firm. Not cheerful. Respectful. Ellie stood on stage. Didn't smile. Just looked out. And in her eyes, something new. Not fear. Not doubt. But the understanding. That her voice wasn't weakness. It was strength. The morning after the concert felt different. Same lockers. Same tiled floors. But the looks Ellie got in the hallway, they weren't sideways anymore. Not judging. Just seeing her. A younger student gave her a nod. By the water fountain, a high school girl whispered, "Your song was really good." Like she wasn't sure she'd say it if she said it louder. Even the biology teacher, normally dry as toast, paused and said, "You've got a voice, Ellie. Don't lose it." The day went on like usual. Classes, bells, homework. But Ellie could feel it. She didn't need to hide anymore. No more whispers defining her. Now they listened. And outside the school, it was even clearer. At the bus stop, a woman in a long coat leaned over. "You that girl who sang last night?" Ellie nodded. "My daughter hadn't spoken to me in 3 weeks. After the concert, she told me she wants to pick up her violin again. So thank you." That night, Jack came home from work just after dark. Inside the mailbox, a plain white envelope. No return address. Inside, a simple card, handwritten in neat cursive. "You don't know me. I was in the audience. That girl, she didn't just sing. She stopped the noise in my head. You reminded me why we listen. Thank you." Jack read it, folded it carefully, and placed it in the box. With Hannah's tapes. With Ellie's. With the voices that kept the silence from winning. That evening, Ellie came back to the garage. Not to sing, just to sit. In a quiet she no longer feared. And Jack knew. This wasn't an ending. It was just the start. The next day, after school, Ellie stayed a little longer in the garage. She stood by her song wall, moving cards around, erasing pencil marks, scribbling new lines. The song she'd sung at the concert still echoed in her mind. But something new was forming alongside it. Quieter. Not quite ready, but growing. She didn't hear the door open, just felt someone standing nearby. "Hey," said Claire. Ellie turned. It was the same girl from school, the one who'd stood silent in that circle once. Phone in hand. Today, there was no smirk, no phone, just a quiet look. And something like regret in her voice. "I heard you at the concert," Claire said. "I don't even know why, but something clicked." Inside, Ellie didn't answer. Not coldly. Just waiting. Claire stepped closer. I scanning the wall. The pinned lyrics, fragments, scratched out titles. "You wrote all this yourself?" "Most of it," Ellie said softly. They stood in silence for a bit. Then Claire said, "If you ever want to write something new, and wouldn't mind having someone around, just say so, okay?" Ellie looked at her for a long moment, then gave a small, quiet nod. And that was enough. Sometimes, friendship doesn't start with laughter. Sometimes, it starts in silence. When two people realize they're hearing the same thing. A few weeks passed. The buzz from the school concert faded. But the ripple Ellie had started kept moving. Teachers began asking her to sing at assemblies. Students started coming up to her, asking for advice, sharing songs of their own. Then, one day, a letter landed on the principal's desk. An invitation for Ellie to represent the school at a regional showcase for young artists. Not a contest. Not for grades. just a place to be heard. At first, Ellie hesitated, but Jack said simply, "It's not a bigger stage. It's just more people who need to know they're not alone." And she agreed, not to win, but for the kids whose songs hadn't been heard yet. The county cultural center didn't look like much. Gray walls, faded flyers, chipped steps. But inside, the air buzzed with quiet energy. The room was filled with kids from all over. Small-town schools, foster homes. Quiet faces holding lyric sheets, and eyes full of something like hope. Backstage, Ellie waited. Not alone, Claire stood beside her, holding her guitar, adjusting the strap. Claire wasn't performing. She was just there. And that mattered. Jack sat near the front. No camera. Just listening. "You ready?" Claire asked. "Not really," Ellie said honestly. "But now I know, that's okay." Claire smiled. "Just say what you need to say. That's why we're all here." Her name was called, no fanfare. Just the next on the list. Ellie stepped out. The light was softer than the school stage. Warmer. In the room, silent. Not tense. Just listening. "I'm Ellie James," she said. "This is a new song. For the ones who don't always know how to speak out loud, but feel everything." She began with a soft guitar line. Her voice steadier now. Less fear. More presence. And her words, not just hers. They reached into the stories of others. The kid in the back row who never raises their hand. The teen scribbling lyrics in a notebook no one's ever read. The ones who sing only in headphones because out loud still feels too big. The song was called "No Voice is Extra." Midway through the second verse, someone in the crowd began to hum along. Then another. And then a third. Not loud, but together, as if each person heard their own silence in hers, and found the courage to let it out. When the song ended, Ellie didn't bow. She just stood there, holding the guitar close. The room was still, but not empty. It was full of something that didn't need applause, didn't need words. And in that fullness, one truth settled quietly. Her voice wasn't just hers anymore. It had become the voice for those who used to stay silent. After the showcase, Ellie slipped back into her rhythm. School, afternoons in the garage, quiet evenings with tea at her grandma's. She didn't chase more performances, didn't ask for attention. She just kept writing, kept singing, kept being herself. One evening, Jack found a letter in the mailbox. Thin paper, neat handwriting. It was from a teacher in a neighboring district. Asterisk, "I work at a small school for foster kids and youth in temporary care. We recently watched Ellie's performance together." The room went quiet. One boy said, "I didn't know you could sing like someone's actually listening. If Ellie would consider visiting and sharing her story, we'd be grateful." Sometimes, what these kids need most is not teaching you, but to know that their silence isn't their fault. Asterisk. Jack showed the letter to Ellie. She read it slowly. Then again, her eyes stayed on the last line. Finally, she said softly, "We should go." That night at dinner, she told her grandma. "Is it safe?" her grandma asked. "It's important," Ellie said. Her grandma nodded. "Set the kettle on the stove. Then go," she said. "Just sing it true." The classroom was small, 20 kids at most. Old wallpaper peeling at the corners. Basic desks. But the room had a different kind of focus. Here, no one interrupted. They all knew what silence sounded like. Ellie stood near the chalkboard, guitar slung over her shoulder, lyrics tucked in a folder. There was no stage, no spotlight, no mic, just her and the kids, watching, not expecting a show, just listening. "I used to think my voice didn't matter," she began. "Didn't even matter to me." Some lowered their heads. A few doodled in their notebooks. But they were listening. "Then someone showed up," she continued. "Didn't tell me what to do. Just stayed. Listened. And in that silence, I started to find a sound." A boy in the back raised his hand. "What if nobody listens?" Ellie paused, met his eyes. "Say it anyway," she said. "Because someone will. Even if you never know it." A girl near the front asked, "What helped you?" "The person who listened," Ellie replied. "And my grandma, who let go just enough." Sometimes you gotta leave the cage open if you want the song to fly. Silence again. But it wasn't awkward. It was full. Then a small "thank you" from the front row. Another, softer. After class, 2 kids approached. A boy and a girl. We write songs too, they said. Can we show you sometime? Ellie smiled. Just a little. Of course, she said. If they're honest. They're already ready. And in that moment, inside a quiet room with unfamiliar walls, Ellie knew. Her voice wasn't just hers anymore. It was something that could spark in someone else. When spring finally reached Banksville, something about the garage behind Jack's house had changed. The door didn't creak anymore. The shelves were lined with folders, notebooks, and old tapes. By the window, 2 chairs, and a third one, always left empty. In the corner, a new board, bigger than the last, covered in cards filled with words. Silence didn't live here anymore. Now, this place held stories. Jack hung a small sign by the entrance. Listening room. Not a studio. Not a club. Just a place where people listen. At first, they came quietly. One kid from school. Then another. Some just sat. Some brought poems. One 8th grader, teased for his stutter, sang without words. Just sounds. And Jack nodded. I hear you. Ellie never tried to be a teacher. She just showed up. Sometimes she played. Sometimes she listened. Sometimes she asked, do you want someone else to hear this? If they nodded, Jack pressed record. If not, they just kept sitting together in the quiet. Every Thursday, they held quiet sessions. No talking. Just playing. No clapping. No comparisons. Just listening. One day, Jack brought out a box. Inside, burned CDs. The cover was Ellie's drawing. Black and white. A simple music note. And beneath it, the title. Unwritten Light. Songs from the ones who used to be silent. It was Ellie's first collection. Not for sale. Just for the people who had been there. Who'd left a piece of themselves in that room. She left one copy on her grandma's kitchen shelf, next to a photo of her mom. Another she placed in the garage, on the shelf with Hannah's tapes. Think her song's in there? Jack asked one evening. I think they all are, Ellie said. It was just too quiet before to hear them. And in that moment, they both knew. This wasn't just a garage anymore. It was a place where silence didn't scare you. It gave you a place to begin, to speak, to sing, to be heard. Word about the listening room spread quickly, not through newspapers, but from person to person. People talked about it at schools, at the library, even on the local radio station. Then, one day, Jack received a letter from the city's cultural council. We've heard that you listen. We'd like to offer a moment where others can listen to you. An invitation to perform at the town's evening concert, held at the old Arts Center. A stage where orchestras once played, now offered to kids who actually had something to say. Ellie didn't need to ask whether she should accept. She already knew. If her voice had helped even one person, then it deserved to be heard again. The auditorium was full, but the feeling in the room wasn't tense. It was expectant. People hadn't come for a show. They came for something real. Jack sat in the front row. Claire was next to him, notebook in hand. A few kids from the listening room sat nearby, eyes wide with a mix of pride and nerves. On stage, just a chair, a mic, and a guitar. No music beforehand. Only silence. Ellie walked out quietly. The light settled soft across her face. Around her neck, Hannah's pendant. In her hands, the same guitar she once used to find her voice. Thank you for being here, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. I'm going to sing a song that didn't come from being alone, but from what happens when that ends. It's called Unwritten Light. It's about a light that hasn't been written down yet, but it's already here. The melody began slow. The guitar was simple. Her voice came from deep inside. No performance. No decoration. Just truth. I'm here. And I'm real. The song didn't beg for understanding. It gave it. The verses told of a silence that once felt like fear. The chorus chose something else. To speak. Even when it's scary. Even when no one answers. The audience listened. Not a breath out of place. When the last note faded, no one moved. The silence hung like the moment before a prayer. Then one person stood. Then another. The room rose quietly. No cheering. No whistles. Just standing. Only then applause. Slow. Solid. Real. Ellie didn't bow. She just looked out across the room. Her voice had been heard. And now, it didn't belong to just her anymore. Spring had fully settled in. The garage stood wide open, warm air carrying the scent of fresh earth and blooming trees. Sunlight spilled across the wooden table, where an old cassette recorder waited. Jack sat nearby, holding a blank tape, the last one in the box. Ellie stood by the wall, thumbing through her song cards. Most of them were gone now, turned into songs. A collection, a concert. Only a few remained, the ones she might come back to. Someday. You ready? Jack asked, peering over his glasses. Yeah, Ellie nodded. This one's not really about the past. And not just about me. He pressed record. A soft click. Silence. And then, she sang. No guitar. No piano. Just her voice. Calm. Clear. No longer a child's. She didn't sing to impress. She just let it be. The song lasted only a couple of minutes. No big crescendos. No high notes. Just words. Plain. Honest. About how even when you're silent, something inside you is still sounding. And when you finally let it out, it becomes music. When it ended, Jack pressed stop. He rewound the tape gently, then placed it in the box, the same one that once held only Hannah's recordings. Now, there were other names. And another voice. He looked at Ellie. This is your mark. Not on a stage, but here, in the fact that you didn't let silence be the end. Ellie stepped closer. She picked up one of the old cards from the wall. One of the first. In her younger, uneven handwriting, it read, I thought I was a whisper. But maybe, I'm a song. She read it aloud, as if for the first time. And in her voice was everything. The journey, the hurt, the release, the belief. The music stayed, and with it, a place that would always listen. If this story found its way to your heart, please like and subscribe. Thank you for listening. Until next time.